It's Sunday, 31st of December, and thought to myself, yeah, we've got one more video to do this year before we say farewell to 2023 and welcome in 2024. It's been a good day already, being Sunday. I was out working this morning. We had a good time together. Another packed occasion, which is always good. Keeps me cheerful. But this evening we're going out for a meal, with it being New Year's Eve. And then we will stay up to watch the clock change over to 12 and welcome in the new year. And my daughter is saying that she wants to play Monopoly, or as I call it, monotony. so we may end up doing something like that, but who knows. As you can hear, for good effect, I've still got my cold, the end of my cold. It seems to be one of those that sort of stays around forever. Most people on the island, and indeed in the UK, seem to have it at the moment. But never mind. It's been a few quiet days since Christmas. Just pottering about at home with the family. The weather has been absolutely awful. And even now, although it's sort of mid-afternoon, there's not a lot of light out there, so I'm surrounded by lamps and goodness knows what to give us a little bit of brightness. So apologies if you can see lots of weird shadows and all sorts of things going on behind. But as I say, just wanted to pop on and do a little bit of a review. Now I'm knitting on this, just this very basic hat that you've seen me knit on before. Haven't managed to do much of that since Christmas, really. But I can't do anything complicated and talk to you at the same time. But I have managed over the little period since Christmas has happened, just about a week ago, I suppose. A week tomorrow would be Christmas Day, because it's New Year's Day tomorrow. I have managed to find some time in between, meals and walks and playing games and goodness knows what else. To do a little bit of work on my Dustland sweater. Now, I'm not going to show you it again because you're fed up seeing it already. But I am making progress. I'm well beyond the place where I split for the sleeves and making a bit of progress down a few of the pattern motifs that repeat themselves all the way down to the bottom of the body of the sweater. So I think I'm probably about 6 sets of motifs off getting to the bottom, and then it's ribbed from there, and of course it's back to pick up the 2 arms. So I am fairly confident. I'm reasonably confident that I can get that sweater completed by Easter, which this year is like end of March or something like that. I can't remember exactly. 24th of March, I don't know. It's in March, I think. And I'm fairly sure that I can crack on and get that Dustland sweater done. That will be an achievement because it will be, again, I don't knit a lot of things for myself, especially the top half of my whole body, because there's plenty of it. But it's looking good, and I'm quite pleased with the colour. I'm quite pleased with how it's knitting up. I haven't made any huge disastrous mistakes. Not at least in September, and that's how long I've been working on it. I think I started it in July or something. So that's why I'm not showing you. Although I'm rabbiting on about it. I'm not going to show you until at least until the body's done. And you see, now you're playing motivation because I've got you to guilt me into getting the blessed thing done. So making progress with the Dustland sweater, as I say, just picking up this little thing just to keep me going. But I thought what might be good is to have a little bit of a review because in some ways I felt as if I've hardly knit anything in 2023, in spite of the fact that this is my first year of doing a knitting vlog thing. But in other ways, I guess when you really think about it, I have actually done a lot. I'm not somebody, as I've said before, who can produce reams and reams and reams of jumpers and all those sorts of things. But I have made some good progress during this year. And I thought I would just share with you just a few of the things that I've knit that feature quite large throughout the year and which I've really enjoyed. Now, probably about this time last year, I had been working on, during December, some little colour work mitts by Aaron and Carlos. I'll insert all these things just to the side of me here so you can see them. These were a really simple knit, done in some fairly basic Saddleworth mill yarn, or Worth mill yarn, from Willie Knit here in the UK. And this was a free pattern that Aaron and Carlos put out, and I hadn't done a huge amount of colour work in the previous set of months, so that's why I started off with those. And they weren't really for anybody, but my youngest daughter has had a go at them, but they're too itchy for her, and so they're just something nice to look at, really. But not long after that, somebody that I now know reasonably well had come to the door. She had heard that I knitted, and with a bottle of Shetland gin, she had received some wool and a pattern to make little cloaks for gin bottles that she was wanting to give out for Christmas. And so had come to the door and said, Andrew, I heard you knit, could you knit these? And I duly did. So they were fun. And I presume that the contents of said gin bottles are now well and truly consumed. And but maybe the little jackets have got some life somewhere, who actually knows. But I was certainly in a colour work vibe at the end of last year, because I hadn't long finished, towards the beginning of December last year, a colour work hat that I did for myself. And that colour work theme did spread into early 2023. A friend of ours had sent a message and said, could you possibly knit this lovely sweater for my son? And I thought, okay, I'll have a go. I was certain I wouldn't get it finished for Christmas, but I did get it finished reasonably after Christmas. And this was I think the Jingle Bells sweater by Hannah Rimmen. And if you've been with my vlog here on YouTube for the whole of its life, you'll know that the very first episode of my vlog featured just the final touches of getting this sweater prepared and blocked, steam blocked, ready to be sent off down south to the young man that it was knitted for. And I really enjoyed that. The lovely little tree motif was very nice. Shortly after that, I cast on a second fisherman's cap. I'd love to be able to show you this, but I can't show you this one because this one actually made its way to the United States of America with a young man who I met when he came to visit us up at Sannox. He, as he was preparing to go back to the US after having been here in Scotland for a few years, got in touch and said, is there anything that you've knit that I could take back? I would love to buy something and take it back. And I don't often sell things, but he was quite insistent. So, off he went with this fisherman's cap, which I called my Northumbrian cap, because the little red and yellow sort of flag checkered design is actually very similar to the flag of Northumberland. And certainly as I was knitting it and choosing all those colours, I was thinking of Northumberland. And so that was that there, and that was a good one. I had brought my laptop here, and of course it's gone off while I've been talking to you, just to remind me of some of the things. Now, of course, in anyone's list, I mean, certainly in my list of things that happen every year, there's always hats and there's always socks. And I've managed to knit a few pairs of socks over the course of this year. And of course, many more hats. Many of you were involved in the charity Beanie Along, and we were able to send quite a few hundred hats to a charity in Glasgow, and that was really good fun. But hats are really something that make a feature in my year, especially this little pattern here from No Frills Knitting, which I've heard me talk about ad infinitum, whatever the word is. I just find it's a really easy pattern to sit and do whilst watching the telly, or whilst at knit group, which is why I cast on this one, or talking to you good folks here on the channel. And I'm sure that there'll be many more of these that will be knit during this year. I'm absolutely sure about it. Now, the other thing that I knit early on in the year was, again, another pattern by Meg at No Frills Knit. And this is just a lovely yarn over cardigan, which I knit. and got to a reasonable place with it, and then tried to do the I-cord bind off, or the I-cord button band. And I'd done this before because I've made a previous one of this particular cardigan in a lovely sort of maroon wine colour. But could I remember how to do the... No, I could not. And so I ended up improvising with a crochet button band, which I think turned out okay. That's still lying around somewhere. It hasn't been gifted anywhere, but you know, as soon as there's a little person that comes to mind, in fact, one's just come to mind. Yeah, so it may have a home very soon. But yeah, so that it wasn't for anyone at the time, but it's just a very easy little pattern to do. Good fun. It's a good stash buster, and I really enjoyed that. So that was that, and then early in January is when my vlogging life started, and in January this year I hope to do a special episode just celebrating that and marking that, as well as the lovely little marker on the way of 11,000 subscribers. Who are you crazy people? I keep saying that, but it's very true. So that was that. I also branched out this year. It was Mrs. Clark's birthday in February, as it is every year. And she'd said this year, she does a little bit of cross-stitch and does a little bit of sewing, as in sewing things on and, you know, all that sort of stuff. And she asked for one of those needle pin cushion things for her birthday. And I thought to myself, well, I looked on Etsy and saw some very fine ones on there at some very fine prices. And so, being the true Scot that I am, I decided, well, I can make one of those. So I did, and so I made her this little pin cushion. And the benefit is that it matches some of our curtains and, you know, a few lamp shades and things like that. So cushions as well that sit on our sofa. So that was that. So she got her pin cushion. It's still working very well. It's just some fabric cut off from the curtains, a nice button on either side, and it's stuffed with some steel wool and some other stuffing in there. So that was that. That was a little branch out into something new and different for me. Let me just flick through and see. Then there was the big thing. I had asked you for suggestions as to what to make for my daughter, because I had some nice woolly blue Leicester wool sitting around, which was for some other project, but that never happened. And I had that wool to make something for my daughter Katie. And in the end, we settled on the Monday sweater by Petite Knit. And then you had the whole saga of me trying to knit this jumper. And I did eventually do it. And boy, was I pleased. I learned a whole load of things in the progress, especially the whole turnover collar thing at the neck. It was completely new. It was my first raglan from the top down. It's a yoke. And the bind offs, miles and miles and miles of rib at the base and at the cuffs. And I was introduced to the Italian bind off, and I was so pleased with the effect of that Italian bind off, just the way that it made the garment look really special. Now, there were a few mistakes that I made in that project that weren't really fixable, so there's a little blemish on the back, but thankfully Katie has long hair and often wears it down, so the little blemish will be covered up by her long hair. And then at one point in the sleeves, I must have done something wrong with the Italian bind off that I couldn't fix, but it's on the inside of the cuff of the sleeve. No one's looking at that, are they? No one, absolutely no one is looking at that. And then, of course, early part of the year, having done a lot of work with Di Gilpin's Gansey pattern resource book, or whatever she called it, we had the Gansey sort of knit along. I'd encouraged you to look out some traditional Gansey patterns and get knitting at some of those, and I designed some myself that were reminiscent of some of the landmarks of Arran. Some of you kindly purchased those and made those, and then so we had a little sort of a little competition, little Gansey sort of knit along, and there were some prizes with that. I hope you enjoyed that for those of you who took part. So that was that. Let me just scroll on here. You know, my Instagram is just full of the tiniest bits of progress on things like big long jumpers and all sorts of things. Really desperate. Certainly one of my highlights of the year was back in March, heading over to the Scottish Yarn Producers Showcase, Wool Producers Showcase, over in Perth. That was absolutely lovely. met some YouTubers over there, some yarny YouTubers, and the lovely coordinator of that whole project, which was absolutely fantastic. I took you on holiday with us over to Perth and Dunblane and various things, and yeah, and then came back from there and had the first of two Sanic Stitches knitting retreats, which were absolutely lovely. I really enjoyed both of those, real highlights of the year. And both of those times managed to produce between us a lovely woven centerpiece, a runner for coffee tables and scarves and all sorts of things as a joint project. But just had an opportunity to meet some fantastic people, many of whom are watchers of the channel. And I want to do a big shout out to those that we met there. I hope you're all doing well. I know that some of you have had ups and downs and health challenges and all sorts of problems that you've kept us abreast with, as well as some lovely celebrations at various parts of your life. So big greetings to all of you who joined us for those, and just a reminder to the rest of you, we do have two Sanic Stitches knitting retreats coming out this year, so you can look on Sanic's Christian Centre's Facebook page or website, sanics.org, for details of those. But those were really lovely, really great few days spent with some fantastic people. And then there was a bit of a disaster, probably my first disaster that didn't really go anywhere during this year. I'd had that Rowan felted tweed with the K-facet sort of design, and I started knitting a sort of shawl scarfy type thing called the Swiss Army shawl scarf, and just wasn't loving the fabric that I was creating. As well as that, in the middle there's some little yarn overs to mark the increases to make the shawl sort of start to expand, and there was a few times I got those in the wrong place, and I had no idea how to unravel all that and get it back to some sort of reasonable shape or form. So I've only just pulled that out. I realised that there was no point knitting on it if it wasn't giving any joy. It wasn't going anywhere. It just wasn't happening. Now let me have a wee look through here and see what else we've got. As I sometimes am accustomed, I do like a little bit of amigurumi. I don't do a lot of crochet. If I'm crocheting, I'm either knitting an extended granny square blanket, or I'm doing some amigurumi. And I know not everyone loves amigurumi, but I quite enjoy it, although it can be a bit frustrating and all that sort of stuff, fiddly and all that sort of thing. But I did make this little bunny, which is very cute. It's a mini version of Emma Bunny, which comes in a larger size that I've already knit for my youngest daughter, and this little mini one, which is very cute. And only a few days ago, Lucy was asking about this little bunny and says, "Is it still around? Could she have it?" And I relented and said that she could have it. So that was possibly my only amigurumi for 2023. I can't remember. And then, of course, everything got very exciting in the summer because little Dougal, our blunder dog, our dunder dog, the Labrador, came to join us, and he's been a whole bundle of fun. And he's gone from being small, cute and cuddly to being massive, very handsome and as strong as a horse. In fact, I think he possibly is a horse. He's maybe half dog, half horse. So he came along, and then, of course, cast on the fated Dustland sweater. Fated in the sense that it's still taken a very long while, but it will be coming to a YouTube channel near you very soon. So just looking on through Instagram here, during our summer months at Sanix, it was fun to be able to host a few knitting workshops. We did some on Magic Loot, we did some on Basic Fair Isle, and that was lots of fun in the midst of all the other things that we're doing there. So that little colourwork strip that I'm showing you now was one of the projects that some of the folks were doing there. Just a very basic sort of square. It's supposed to be like a pot holder or something like that. So a basic red square and some little kind of fleur-de-lis motifs coming through. And for many of the folks that were there, they hadn't done sort of any sort of Fair Isle before. So that was that in the summer. Then I say at the second Sanic Stitches retreat, I was gifted some beautiful wool. which I haven't done anything with yet. So there's still loads of possibilities. It's all sort of fingering stroke sport weight. So that's definitely coming to a project near this YouTube channel some point soon. And as well as that, I had a lovely gift from Red Stag Fibre in the back end of the year, which is a similar weight to some of the stuff I received. So that will definitely, possibly, it will find its way into some sort of project when I've had the chance to sit down and think what's next on the cards. And then I'm just filled in the next part of my Instagram here, loads and loads of beanies, which went to the Beanie Along. And then what else have we got? I did some knitting when I was away on retreat. What else? And then what have we got? Well, into the latter part of the year, of course, I was doing some of the ubiquitous gift knitting, the socks, which were designed for my middle daughter's boyfriend down south. He hasn't yet got them because we had to pack Katie off fairly early because of the weather and the storms. So not in time to get those packed up and sent. But they'll be going off to him very soon. So nice little socks. And then, of course, the last part of the year, you might remember if you've been watching, I made some fingerless gloves for Mrs. Clark, supposedly for her Christmas caroling. I think she might have worn them once or twice over the course of the winter period, which is not bad, I suppose. And then, of course, I absolutely frustrated the life out of myself by deciding that I would finish the mini Nordic sweater number 3, which was already half made and sitting in the bag with all the wool. And then, in some streak of madness, decided that I was going to try and get sweater number 4 finished by the 4th Sunday of Advent, which was Christmas Eve, and I duly did it. But as you will remember me saying, I have decided that I'm not going to make 24. One for each of the 4 Sundays of Advent is just fine. Thank you very much. Too fiddly, life is too short, and all the rest of it. And so that really is the sum of my knitting, which, you know, doesn't seem like a huge deal, but actually when I think about it, for me, in the midst of, you know, 2 jobs, family, doctoral studies, you know, Uncle Tom Cobley and all, everything thrown into the equation, I think that was quite reasonably enough. So this first part of the year in 2024, I'll be finishing off, hopefully before Easter, as I said, hopefully before Easter, finishing off the Dustland sweater. Now, as for new cast-ons, I do have some aspirations, and one of those I may have mentioned before, I can't quite remember if I did or not. One of my aspirations is to do the Midwinter Blanket by Martin Storey. I caught my eye on that. I think it was on somebody's Instagram somewhere at some point in the last month or so. I think there was a sort of knit along with that, but I entirely missed that, and I don't have time for knit alongs, can't cope with that sort of pressure. But I do want to do that. I've got some lovely Jameson and Smith wool kicking about with some other stuff that will match well with it, and I hope to make a start on that. The benefit of that sort of thing, of course, is it's panels, squared panels. Squares that all get knitted up individually, the colour work, and then when you get enough of them, you can start putting them together. Now, I find the benefit of that kind of thing is that you get the sort of short-term burst of satisfaction having completed a panel, and then you can save them up, and then you get the satisfaction of completing 6 panels or 9 panels or 12 panels, or you get the idea. It just gives you that little bit of incentive, and so that's definitely one of the things that's going to be on my list starting very soon in the new year. And then one of the other things that I'm contemplating is yet another sweater, possibly not for me, possibly for Mrs. C, but I'm potentially going to look at some of Jessica McDonald. Now, I think it's Jessica McDonald. I should have checked that. And the reason I might be getting mixed up with that is because on the island somewhere, there's a jewellery silver artist who is called Jess McDonald, and she does jewellery, but I'm sure this is a knitting designer, Jessica McDonald, and she does some lovely colourwork sweater patterns. So I'm very tempted to start working on one of those, basically because I like her patterns and I'd like to try them, but basically because Mrs. Clark is due a jumper. My youngest has had a jumper, my middle daughter has had a jumper, my wife definitely needs one, and my eldest is not particularly knit worthy, so doesn't get any. But yeah, so that's the early plans. And beyond that, I don't really know. I think those few sets of projects might do me a good little while. Having said that, probably like you, I've got a computer stuffed full of knitting patterns that I've seen and that I've downloaded and thought, oh, that looks really good. With that idea that someday I'll have enough time and all that sort of thing to actually start on some of that stuff. So that, friends, that was 2023. It doesn't always feel like an awful lot, but as I said before, I'm a slow knitter. I have no desire to be a speed knitter. I do it for relaxation and enjoyment. And the added bonus is that sometimes you get stuff at the end which make nice gifts, nice things to give, or some nice things to keep. So who knows what 2024 will bring. It's, as I say, it's 31st of January, and at this time of the year, this little period in between Christmas and New Year, that's my little sort of reflective oasis, where I quite enjoy looking back over the last year in various ways, thinking about the present and wondering what the future might hold. No idea, who knows, but ready for it. Not only in the case of the knitting, but life in general. This last year has been quite good for us. Some of the changes that are coming up is that my mother-in-law is moving over to the island in the first couple of months of the year. At some point, we're still to make a final date, depending on removal companies and all that sort of thing. Next year, my middle daughter heads off to university, so we've got a period of exams and whatnot coming up. This is my youngest daughter's last year at primary school, so she'll be moving to senior school. Work is busy, church is growing. In fact, church is in the next month or so, we're actually moving to a larger place. We don't have a building of our own. The church is only about 23 years old. It started as a new church, a new Baptist church here in Arran, and we've enjoyed some significant growth, as I've mentioned before, in this last year and a bit, over 100% growth, which means we now, are far too many of us for the small room that we meet in. We're absolutely packed in there this morning like sardines. So we're moving all the way across the road to the village hall from the little, the smaller hall that we've been meeting in. And hopefully that will give us some space to integrate some new folks and be able to do some stuff with the children that we have as part of the fellowship and all that. So that's really exciting. Sanix, we're just starting to get all our retreats and events and all sorts of things starting off for a new year. I say including 2 Sanix stitches, but also including creative writing retreats, men's retreats, songwriting retreats, and a host of other things. So that's all coming up work-wise. But for me, I'm hoping for a peaceful 2024. I know that's a sort of, it's almost like a sort of Miss World thing to hope for, world peace. But yeah, we are in the midst of some really troublesome, calamitous things in our world at the moment, and long to see those come to an end. But in fact, in everyday community and everyday life, we could all use a little bit more peace. And the Hebrew word for peace is shalom. You've probably heard that. You probably know that. And it doesn't just mean the absence of strife or fighting or that sort of thing. It means a fullness of peace, a really full, luscious, delicious, fulfilling, restful peace. And so that's what I'm hoping for our world. It's really what I'm hoping for myself. And dear friends, it's what I'm hoping for you. Thank you so much to all of you who have journeyed through all or part of 2023 with me. I'm looking forward to what 2024 might bring to the channel. I'm hoping to get you out and about a little bit more, but it hasn't been the weather to be going anywhere of late. I'm hoping to get you about, see more of the island, more of the events that go on, as well as update on all the nits and various things. And all that remains for me to say is have a very good New Year celebration, whatever you're doing. And I'll see you in 2024. Bearach Jegut agus blian a fawr.